Hey everyone, so this is a new game I just played, where, yeah, eventually developed into a Queen Endgame, like you saw in the title. Let's get into it. So, my opponent plays d4, I play knight f6, trying to play a Nimso Indian, and this is one of the few times I'm actually able to play a Nimso Indian defense, which is amazing. I haven't played a Nimso Indian in ages. Every time I play this, someone plays either knight f3 or e3 or doesn't play c4 or something stupid like that. But I get bishop b4 on the board, and my opponent decides to play bishop d2. I play my lines, which starts with d5. My opponent goes e3. I castle, because when he plays a3, you're supposed to castle. This is actually called the normal line, which is pretty funny. My opponent plays knight f3, and I play c5, trying to bust open the center. Very nice. My opponent goes a3, also a book move. I don't think that my opponent knew his theory in this one. He might have, he may have. I have to take. I take on a d4, which is actually the best move. The engine says it's the best move, but game review says it's not. My opponent takes the bishop and allows me to develop my knight with tempo. And here, we're still kind of in the opening, but we're not after the move that my opponent played, which is bishop f6. And as you can see, this is not a very good move. My opponent here thought that bishop f6 won a pawn. The reason being is because after queen takes f6, takes, queen takes pawn, and he's just up a pawn. But he forgot here, my opponent forgot here that this pawn would also be hanging in that line, and so we would have equal pawns. And actually, I would be probably slightly better. He would put his rook over here. I'd bring my bishop out to e6. I get faster development. I'm probably better in this game. I'm also just able to take on a3 after the queen moves off this diagonal. Actually, I'm also just able to take on a3, it's just the hanging pawn. But my opponent realizes a mistake after I take back with the queen and does not take on d5. I'll just show you the line real quick. So takes. I take on b2. My opponent has to play rook d1, and actually, bishop e6 is the best move, which does allow like this to defend the pawn. But now I get control of the d file, and if he stays on the d file, I still get control of the d file because my knight defends and there's no back rank mate. So that'd be a really great way to end the game. My opponent doesn't do it. My opponent plays this interesting move, queen d2, after taking twice. After taking once, my opponent plays queen d2, simply trying to defend his pawn and not really doing anything too special, right? So I decide, okay, well, what pieces haven't played? My bishop and my rook, so let's bring them out. I go bishop g4. Bishop g4, simply I'm threatening to win a pawn, so I'm forcing my opponent to do something, and I'm developing my bishop with tempo. Always a very nice idea. My opponent goes bishop e2. Note he still cannot take on d5 since this b2 pawn is hanging. My opponent goes bishop e2, the best move, and I bring my f rook to the d file. I thought this was better than the a rook because I thought the a rook can come to the c file in some circumstances, and I'd like to push my d pawn. If I can push my d pawn down the board, then I'm probably just better or even winning. This is a very nice theory that I've got here. I haven't had a chance to really play this, so it's very nice that I'm able to. My opponent castles. Now d4 is the best move. d4 is the best move. I didn't play this because I thought knight d4 as bishop is defended. If takes. I don't know what I didn't see, because after takes, he hangs a queen, which is pretty funny. But after takes, let's say takes, and I can take back with the queen. My opponent does get access to the file, and at the end of the day, this is actually a drawn endgame. We just have equal pawn structures, completely a draw. So we're not going to do that. And instead, I decided to prepare for a move by first taking the knight, which I thought was very nice. My dog is going insane in the background and being very annoying. If she keeps it up, I will have to pause the recording. So, bishop f3. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording now. Crisis has been averted, and the dog has stopped going insane. So I thought bishop f3 was a very, very nice move. The idea simply being that the knight was the big issue, and I didn't want the knight to capture. If the pawn captures, then I capture with my knight, and I'd be doing really great. So my opponent recaptures with the bishop. Of course, you don't want to recapture with the g-pawn. And now I play the move d4. Opening up some lines. I briefly calculated the move e4, but I thought it was bad after something like knight e5. And I thought that I just had a very nice position here. Because, I mean, my knight gets in. This pawn is actually very dangerous. I can even push to d3. I can bring my other rook to the c file. I'm up on development. I can't draw arrows, but I'm up on development, and I'm doing quite well. My opponent doesn't do that. My opponent takes, which is a bad move. You're not really supposed to do that. I was also calculating this move, bishop c6, in which case I was thinking about de3 first, and I was even calculating this very interesting line, fe3, but I realized it lost because after all these interesting trades, what happens is that he takes here, bishop back, and I take, and I'm up in exchange. So I realized that that lost, and not much really to say there. Actually, it's even a draw here. If my opponent goes here and queen e3, it's a draw, but what I can do to make it like less draw, I can play bc3 and maybe play for a win. There's a lot of interesting lines, but that's not what my opponent did. My opponent takes on d4. I take back with a knight, of course. You're not really supposed to take back with a rook in these scenarios. You might be like, okay, well, I'm attacking the queen. It can't be a bad move. I'm getting my rook out. All very, very nice stuff. You're not really supposed to do that. The threat in this case is more valuable than the execution, and knight d4 is a lot better than rook d4, because what I'm doing, I'm threatening the queen indirectly because I'm attacking the bishop with check, and that would win the queen. So I'm doing it indirectly, and it's a lot better than just attacking the queen outright, because now the queen has to move even will, and I can get my knight out. So my opponent goes queen e3 and blunders a fork, which I promptly do not see. Which is insane. Knight c2 is a very reasonable move, and I just completely missed it. I really don't know why I missed it. Maybe I was thinking that my opponent wouldn't blunder such a thing, and I just thought, oh well, he's not gonna blunder that. Let's not even consider that there could be easy blunders like this. I just completely missed it. And if I had found that move, I mean, we wouldn't have a video today. So, it'd be pretty nice. But I didn't see it. I just simply take on f3 because I thought it was a good move. And it has some advantages, minus 0.6. I thought it was very nice. Now my opponent has to take with the g-pawn or take with the queen. My opponent decides to take with the g-pawn. I played b6. Reason being is because I didn't want to take here immediately. I was thinking about this, but I was like, okay, well, I mean, he goes here. I have to move my queen out, probably to this move, square here. I mean, draw for draw, agreed. There's not much to really say here. I go here, he goes here, threatening mate, here. Let's just put a random line on. This line, I mean, I have winning chances because his pawns are bad, but it's just a draw. There's nothing going on there. So my opponent takes with the g-pawn. And I play the move b6. Yeah, I just told you that. My opponent plays b4, defending their pawn by advancing it, and I go rook c8, rook ac8, which I thought was reasonable. The idea is very interesting. The idea is just rook c3, and I'm gonna pick up this pawn. A very normal idea. My opponent plays rook c1. I play this move g6, which I thought was reasonable. In all honesty, if I wanted to make luft, I should have played h6 or even h5, because you'll see later that those dark squared weaknesses with those diagonals could be a problem. So g6 happens, my opponent takes, I recapture, and my opponent goes here, but this just loses the pawn. And I do that very quickly. And my opponent finds a very nice resource here. My opponent finds this move queen c7. Which I thought was very scary. And obviously you're like, oh, well, you take on a3, you defend your pawn, you're doing great. But then I was like, wait a second. Wait a minute. Wait. But queen d8, king g7, queen here. Is that not a perpetual? And if I ever go f6, I mean, this check, I didn't think that there was a perpetual, but stupid me If I go for this and queen d1 here, I just block. In this move, there's no queen h3 because of the queen guards. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but I did not see that, and that would be the best line. Instead, I played a very interesting move. I played this move, queen a8, defending my a7 pawn and keeping some advantage. It's not a very good move, but I thought that it was the best way because I'm stopping the attack on the 8th rank, and I thought that I was still doing better here. I'm up a pawn, right? So my opponent goes king f1. I go h5. Reason being, I want to have the h7 square when he has these checks on me. My opponent goes king e2. I give him this check, I give him this check, and I pick up the pawn in a3. Again, not the best way to play. Like I said, queen endgames are really tricky. Queen endgames are really tricky. The best move is this, and here, like this maybe, I don't even know, maybe this move, king and g3, and now I take, I guess, I don't, this is just the engine line. I don't really know the difference at all, but you know, whatever. I take on a3 first. My opponent gives me this check. I go king h7. My opponent plays the move that I thought he'd play. He plays the move queen d5, and I take on b4. This is kind of an interesting endgame because my opponent takes on f7 and is going to take on a7 after they move king h6. He doesn't have any more checks as the queen actually guards both these squares, so he has to take on a7. I give him a check, 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 and I play this move b5, which I thought was very natural. The reason why I gave all these checks was if I played b5 immediately, I was kind of scared of some checks of his own, and I just didn't want to allow this. Of course, this is fine, but I mean, I didn't want to allow any of that. So check, 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 and I play b5, and I'm guarding all of his checking squares. Now, he goes queen b7. It's a draw here, actually. It's a draw here after the one and only move h4. What does that move do? No idea, but it's the move. So I play b5. My opponent goes queen b7. Simple idea, stop the b pawn. Now I give this check and I play b4, which I thought was nice because my opponent relinquishes his ideas of coming over here with checks on the king. So I play b4. My opponent goes queen f7. I give this check. I take this pawn on h2. I give another check. I go queen d6 now. Simple idea. Defend the f8 square. Defend the f4 square. No checks. I should be fine. My opponent goes queen g8. Very interesting move. Very interesting move. And here I probably should have played queen c5 check. If I was playing again, I would have played queen c5 check. And I mean, this is still very rough. Like here, there's some issues, but I mean, it's complicated. It's just it's a really tough position. It's a queen end game. I'm spending a lot of time. I spend a bunch of time. I play this move, queen f6, after like 10 seconds to defend the h8 square. My opponent goes queen b3. I go here. Another very nice move. This is a winning king and pawn, even though the king's in the square, because here, 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 easy. I go there. My opponent goes queen back to g8, threatening the f8 checks again, and it's really rough. And I go b3, the best move. This is the only way to make an advantage, actually. b3 is the only way to win the game. My opponent goes on f8. I go king g5. King h7 was probably better. And I mean, this is really rough. You have to sack this pawn. Actually, if you sack that pawn, it's easy because queen c2. It's just, I guess not king h7. It's tough to see what the engine actually wants here because it's just such a weird position. I go king g5, queen d8, and I bring my queen back to f6, and it's a blundering a draw. Why it blunders a draw? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure why this blunders a draw. The best move is to basically bring my king to the f-file, suffer a lot of checks like queen d5, king f6, check, king back to g5 here. I don't know what the engine wants. What does it want? Here, here. queen c8 here, queen here, and eventually I'm hiding my king on g7. That's what the engine wants. like all of this ends up with the king hiding himself on these squares over here, and I'm actually just okay. That's a little hard to see. That's a little hard to see. It's kind of hard to see all this line. Last check. Let me show you. Last check. No more checks. That's a little hard to see. I didn't see that line. That's like 10 moves that you have to see in a head, and with a bunch of other variations. That's kind of hard to see. I didn't see that line. So queen f6. My opponent goes queen d5. I go king h here, and he takes this pawn. I thought that I had to do this. I thought I had to sack the pawn and go with my h pawn. My opponent goes queen e3. I go king h5, check, queen g5. If he trades, this is lost because while he wins this, I win this. Here, my opponent can't come back with the pawn. Here, I go g5. Here, I have this, and very simple, easy trick. This, and yeah, you don't want to play g3 here because that'd be a draw, but king g3 here, king h3, h1, g3 here, here. Yeah, you don't want to do that because that'd be a draw, but either way, that's a moot point. My opponent goes queen f8 instead of trading with me. I go for this queen d2, king g1, check. I go here, and what's rough is that I was very, very close to winning this game. Very, very close. I play h3. And the reason why the game isn't winning for black, and you might think it is, because my king actually runs away. My king runs up to this pawn and wins it, and that should be winning, but unfortunately, my opponent has a very nice trick, and it comes to the fact that the white king, is actually stalemated here. And there's nothing I can do. Queen h8, I go up, I come up, I come up, I come up. And I thought that my opponent had this tactic. My opponent plays queen e4, one of the best moves. And I realized my opponent had crazy queen, like around here. I realized my opponent had crazy queen. And I mean, yeah, my opponent finds it, and I'm forced to take the queen, and it's stalemate. That was a pretty interesting game. It's a pretty rough game. Yeah, it's really hard to play these insane queen end games where you don't even know why you blunder. I mean, I knew I was gonna lose the pawn, but I thought, okay, well, I have the h pawn. It's still a 2-on-1. I have some chances. I mean, it's still a draw. They're so drawish. Queen end games are so drawish. Rook end games are so drawish. Like at very high levels. I wouldn't say that I'm at the highest level. These end games are like the hardest thing in chess. They really are. They're like the bane of my existence. Oh my gosh. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this instructive, entertaining, all of the above. Please, if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, all the normal stuff that YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, good evening and good night.